I was having a hard time hearing her.
Okay. She was speaking quietly. Your last name, will you pronounce that for me, please?
Sonne.
Sonne.
S-O-N-E.
Thank you. Okay. Can you go ahead and raise your right hand?
Yes.
Do you swear or affirm the testimony you're about to provide is true and accurate?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Jorde?
Please state your name, ma'am.
Vicki Sonne.
And Ms. Sonne, you own two parcels in question in this litigation relative to Summit Carbon Solutions and where they'd like to place a hazardous pipeline. Is that right?
It's actually, I'm representing my husband and my daughter. And my husband has been in the hospital since October 19th, and he's not able to, but I have to do it for him and my daughter.
And ma'am, on the screen, is that land that you recognize as your family's ground that's potentially affected? Can you see a map on the computer screen by any chance?
Yes. Let's see. On the north side of the railroad tracks is our daughter Sandy's land. And on the south side of the track is Larry's land.
Okay, so essentially the railroad track is the property dividing line, although your family has ownership interest in everything we see there. Is that correct? In red?
Yes.
Okay,
correct.
Very good. And you did cause to be filed, you personally, along with your husband and daughter, what's known as pre-filed testimony. Were there questions and answers? Do you recall preparing that?
Yes, back several months ago, and with Larry being in the hospital and me going twice a day and spending a lot of time there, I have not picked that up since. Not even sure where it's at, but I have other things I'd like to share today.
Okay, so just one thing at a time. At the time you answered those questions, I take it you did that to the best of your abilities, and if we were to go back through those questions today, would you substantially provide the same answers as you did then?
I want to make sure that they understand that as I speak about mom and dad, it's Larry's mom and dad. But when we got married, we lived just a half a mile south and then a half a mile west. And they gave me permission to call them mom and dad. So as I speak about mom and dad, that's actually Larry's parents.
Okay, so for any references in the pre-filed testimony where you're familiarly referring to a mom and a dad, to be specific, that's your husband's parents.
Correct.
Very
yes.
good. And other than that clarification, would you agree that the information and answers you provided previously would be substantially the same that you would give today if we went through each of those questions?
Brian, I believe so. I honestly can't remember all of them. Like I said, I've been taking care of Larry for a long time, and I haven't studied that at all.
Okay, that's just fine. Why don't we do this? Why don't we offer Exhibit 184, which is the pre-filed testimony of Ms. Sonne and attachments.
No objection. Seeing no objection, the board will admit.
Thank you. Now, ma'am, the testimony previously prepared is now in evidence, and we don't have to go back through that unless you can think of, again, a correction that you need to make. But if not, can you think of any updates since the time that was prepared that are necessary for the board to know?
Yes, I have a lot of updates that I'd like to go through if I could.
Well, let's give me the first update and let's see where that takes us.
if you can see this right here,
The map in question, ma'am?
yes, and that would be our daughter's map.
So
Okay.
so the land north of the railroad tracks.
Correct. And I would like to go through this so you understand. I don't know, can you see this picture on the camera?
Well, it's grainy. It looks like you're maybe showing a lane or a road and some corn stalks potentially.
This is what Summit went into her property without permission. Okay? This was, they went down her lane on the back side, went through her cornfield. And I hope I
Objection,
can
Your
hold
Honor.
it well enough.
That states your
for you.
objection.
Yeah, I would be interested, I guess, in when that allegedly happened. I mean, obviously there's some issues with our inability to see what's actually being shown, but also, whether this is an update, which I still might have an objection to, or whether this was something that could have been addressed in pre-filed testimony and pre-filed exhibits.
Mr. Jorde, hold on, Ms. Sonne. Mr. Jorde.
I agree that at this point we're not sure. I myself am not sure, so I think maybe I could ask a foundational question perhaps to clear that up.
Thank you.
Ma'am, just a little housekeeping. I understand you wanted to talk about Summit entering your daughter's land. Do you recall if that was prior to kind of the end of July of 2023, or do you think that occurred after that time?
I did not do any pre-filed testimony with the IUB board because I didn't know how. And so I had just compiled a whole desk full of information. What had happened was we knew that they were we knew we had to file some by the 22nd. And they, if I remember correctly, this happened on July 13th or 14th. And we didn't find it till the next week, and it didn't get in our testimony.
Okay, so let me just stop you there because there's some kind of rules we're trying to follow here. And so what you're saying is the entrance onto the land in question may have technically occurred prior to the pre-filed testimony deadline, but that you had no knowledge of it occurring because they didn't tell you, and you found out after the fact. Is that fair?
Yes, and that they didn't have permission.
Okay. All right. And was that kind of the gist of the point you wanted to make, that they entered your daughter's land without permission?
Yes, and then this is what they offered. I don't know if you can see that either, but
Let me just help you. And then after the fact, did they send paperwork offering to compensate your daughter for any damages to the crops that they would have interfered with?
right, and that was $64.40.
Okay, all right. Is there a second update of events that happened after approximately July 22nd, 2023?
Again, Brian, I did not have a chance to go through everything on the desk behind me, but they sent us a new offer. And when you really read the contract, it was like they had control of the land for 24 months and they could move it any which direction they wanted, and that we could be in violation of trying to farm our own land. And
Objection. State the objection.
Again, and I appreciate Mr. Jorde's foundational questions on the first issue, and it may be appropriate to do that again here to get a sense of what time frame we're talking about. And if Mr. Jorde would like to do that, I'm happy to sort of suspend my objection to allow that to happen.
I'll try my best. So Vicki, just kind of help me out a little bit. What we're trying to do, and it's cumbersome and technical, but we're trying to figure out if the information you want to share now are things that occurred after approximately the latter part of July of this year, such that they are truly updates or information that was impossible for you to know prior to that time. That's what we're trying to figure out, okay? So with that kind of ground rule in mind, do you have other updates you think might fit into that category?
Well, if you can see this piece right here, they had also entered into her pasture, which we just had rebuilt and spent $17,000 getting that pasture redone.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
Yeah,
There's a stake in
Hold
there.
on, Ms. Sonne. Ms. Sonne, we have an objection,
Yes.
so we
So-
gotta sort that out. Sorry, it's just gonna be a little bit technical while the lawyers sort some things out here. Go
So
ahead, Mr.
I'm going to
Dabrowski.
request that the witness be asked not to put the facts in the record before we get these issues straightened out. So we have this pattern where the witness is putting, sort of these facts that are intended to be adverse in the record, and then we have to go back and clean up, well, was this in the time frame that's appropriate for an update? And I mean, yeah, I could move to strike it all, but that doesn't seem like a very effective process either. So if we can just have the witness state generally, the topic without all the facts and when it took place, I think that would facilitate getting things in the right order and keeping the record clear here.
Mr. Jorde, do you have a comment?
I don't disagree with that. I'm trying to keep us on that path.
Okay, if we can go ahead and clear up when this occurred, or alleged to have occurred, and try to keep things as tight as we can.
So Vicki, again, if we could maybe lead with your best estimation of time frame before we get into kind of the content of the updates you'd like to share. Start us out with kind of the time frame would be helpful.
Well, as we were checking cows, we found a stake right here at this corner of the pasture. And again, they had no permission to be in there.
So, and I appreciate checking cows means something to you in terms of the calendar, but approximately when do you think that would have been, if you can give me an approximate date?
It could have been the end of July. We have cows in that whole pasture, and so we were checking that every day.
Okay. With that, again, is the point that you found a stake or of evidence of some type of, in what your belief would be a trespass or unauthorized entry on your daughter's pasture land?
Correct.
All right.
It had the pink flags, which matched the pink flags that we found down here in the road.
Understood.
Over here.
And then did Summit send some type of financial compensation for any damages that occurred in the pasture?
No, just the cornfield.
Okay. And then if maybe we could move to the next update and again try to frame them first in kind of by date or time before we get into the content, please.
They had sent a new contract to us for this one.
And that would have been after July, end of July?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
And so that's when, okay, so now I'm crossing the railroad track, and in that one, I didn't even read the whole thing because I don't believe in it. It's not right. And they wanted to have 24 months to control this land, and they could move it either way they wanted to. And right there is where our son and our 4 grandkids live, and right there is where our daughter lives. And we wouldn't want it on our neighbors either.
And let me, Vicki, let me just stop you there. When you say right there, are you indicating kind of there's like three buildings that are at the south end of a lane that would be southeast of your daughter's pasture there? Is that when you say right there?
She lives right here.
Okay, and you're just going to have to help us with north, south, east, west, and relative to the railroad best you can.
Okay, so she would be northeast. I'm sorry, of the railroad track. She'd be southwest of that railroad track, and Randy would be over here, and he would be southwest of the railroad track.
All right, let me just do this. If you look at the land held by Larry, which is the entire parcel south of the railroad, and you go to the southwest corner of that ground, you see a farm site, and that's being circled there on the screen. Is that where your son lives?
Yes, our son and his wife and 4 children.
All right, and your son's name?
Is Randy Sonne.
Okay, thank you. And then to go to where your daughter resides, where would we go from Randy's home?
We'd go straight north to the corner and then go west, and she's right here on the south side.
Okay, so if we go due north and then we get to a roadway, we could cross the railroad, and then there's a home site next to the other red parcel, correct?
Correct.
And that's where your daughter lives, and does she have any children there?
No.
Okay, now that we're kind of orientated, was the point being that a new offer came and you learned that they sought 24 months, they specifically defined the quote-unquote temporary easement. Is that the point?
Yes, and again, Brian, we weren't in favor of it to begin with, but it was totally wrong. It takes all the way across the field, and we're humble farmers, we don't farm a lot of land. We need this land into production.
Objection, Your Honor.
State the objection.
These sort of general objections about impact on the farming and crossing the field and what have you, that is the gist of what the pre-filed testimony and exhibits are. Again, this time is not just for free-floating statements. This is for specific questioning of what was filed in advance.
Mr. Jorde.
Trying to work through it the best we can here.
Okay, let's try to get through to the cross-examination, please.
Yeah. Okay. And ma'am, the other folks are going to be able to ask you some questions. So again, in terms of the concept of an update of kind of newly found information or occurrences, was there anything else like that? So we obviously know of the opposition and the worries and the dangers that you believe, but has there been some new information that you think is unique and different you'd like to share?
We attended some meetings at the Floyd County Fairgrounds, and I believe his name was Jimmy Powell, and there was a presentation there, and we went. But we decided that after we listened to that, there's no safety. They wouldn't tell them what their plume was, and a fireman spoke. And we learned that you could be dead within 1 to 11 seconds, and they could never get to you because their equipment wouldn't allow them in, and they'd be dead trying to get to us. This is wrong, guys. It's absolutely wrong. They can do it a different way, and it's not right to take someone's land that they've worked so hard for. Larry's dad bought that in 1956. He bought that other little corner piece in 1960.
Objection.
State the objection.
Again, this is not the time for oral testimony. We need to get on to questioning, so it is specific questions about the pre-filed testimony. This is just, I hate to have to move to strike, but this witness is just offering a sort of oral commentary divorced from any questions, and that's just not appropriate.
Mr. Jorde?
So I think the first part of the answer was appropriate, and then I think we need to rein in the second half, and I'll try to do that and see if I can't get this witness passed here very soon.
Okay, thank you. Let's try to do that.
So ma'am, on the last answer you were giving, you told us about a new event where Mr. Powell of Summit spoke and new information was learned, and that was fine. And then you kind of went into why that also gives you concerns, which you've expressed in good detail. So if we could just keep, if you have another update, if we could just keep it to the part that's new, and I'm sure we all can draw the conclusion of the fact, but if we can just keep it to the new fact that you've come across, please.
The fact is that my husband went into the hospital October 19th with COVID, and he has been there ever since. And I wanted to show you pictures. I'm not a computer guru, and he's struggling with some short-term memory, and he had COVID, and I had no time. I didn't realize how important it was that I should have sent into the IUB board all of this time. I have a picture here, and I'd saved it all on the desk, but I thought I was supposed to be sharing it now on how we felt. I have family pictures so you understand how hardworking his parents were, how hardworking our daughter was, how it took her all this time to get this farm up in shape, and how the railroad won't let, if it isn't a utility, they won't let them go because they've had trouble. There's a county tile right in here, and her cattle are in there, and there's a named creek, and it's not safe. It'll kill those cattle if it would ever leak. And sorry, no, it's not right. And okay, not only is it here, it's also here where the county tile is. And
Ma'am, let me just stop you there. On the tile, is there a update specifically as to the location of tile that you don't believe Summit is taking into account with its route that you'd like to kind of orientate us to?
Okay, there's a 4-foot county tile where this water comes in.
So I gotta stop you there. Remember, because we're virtual. So where the water comes in is where specifically on the property?
Right here where the arrow is on the map.
We don't have that might be the mouse on your computer. So from your son's house, where does the water come in? West, north, east?
Well, let's see. You would come in and come through this driveway and into the pasture, and it would be right here.
Okay. So from your son's home, is it north? Is it east? North. Okay. Is it north of the proposed pipeline route?
Yes.
All right. Is it south of the railroad?
No, it's north of the railroad.
All right. So it's closer to the east-west roadway. And what road is that, please?
This road up here is 220th.
Okay. And so is it fair to say the water comes in closer to 420th?
220th.
Pardon me, 220th, correct?
Yes.
All right. And so are you saying there are tile lines there that you believe are important for the board to consider?
Not so much tile lines in the pasture, but it's a 4-foot county tile that is taking all the water up here to the north, and it's bringing it in. And then it takes it down to Gizzard Creek, which is a named creek. And it took us 2 years to work with the Army Corps of Engineers to get this fence around this pasture. And then they want to bore, if you see this line here, they want to bore under that creek to bring it under the railroad and across this farm, which is now we're going into Larry's land, and there's tile in this whole thing.
And okay, and we appreciate that. And the gist is the concern of the tile. But was there anything that you've learned maybe in the last 3-4 months that caused you greater concern than you had before?
Yes, when we attended that meeting and they didn't come up with the safety at all and wouldn't express it and tell it, that we only have 4 grandchildren, and that's way too close. A real estate agent stated that he didn't think any land or acreages or anything should be anywhere that should be stated in a contract unless they were at least 5 miles from a CO2 pipe. And that's very short distance. And when they moved this one, originally they came out and they had it incorrect, and look how close that is to Sandy's.
And when you're referencing Sandy, who is that, please?
That's our daughter who owns the land north of the railroad tracks.
Okay, very good. And ma'am, I'm at the point where I probably need to let some others ask questions. If you had maybe one more update, if it's very important. Otherwise, I'm going to let some other folks ask questions of you.
Again, I didn't realize I was supposed to be submitting all of this at all the time. The other thing is I was very busy just trying to keep up with Larry Dale. But this is a humble family working farm. This provides for Randy's family. He's the tenant. And it's not safe. And I don't care if it be a neighbor living there. It doesn't need to be. They can cap the CO2. They can do something else with methanol. They do not need this ground. It's not right.
And I appreciate that summary, ma'am. And at this time, I'm going to let some other folks ask questions, okay?
Okay.
Mr. Taylor? No? Okay, Mr. Whippel.
I'd just like to establish how close the route comes to your daughter's home, the residence there. She owns the land north of the railroad, you said, but I believe the residence is on 220th.
Correct.
And so I'd just like in the record to establish clearly the distance from that residence. If we can get that on the KMZ. So I don't know if you can see that, ma'am, but it looks like 514 feet. Does that seem about right to you from your daughter's residence?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Nothing further, Your Honor.
Ms. Colas?
Good afternoon, Ms. Sonne, or morning. I have a few questions. When I'm looking at the KMZ map, as I go, if you take the lowest part, kind of the center of the proposed pipeline, and you cross the railroad tracks, there appears to be several waterways that it's crossing. Is that true?
It's in her pasture. There's a whole creek that goes down through there. Yes.
So the pipeline will be going across to creek.
Well, isn't it supposed to go underneath?
Whatever.
Yeah, but this whole pasture has been underwater in flooded years. Right now we're in drought times. But her whole land was underwater. It is so dangerous to even be there. And the railroad won't let them because they're not a utility. They said they will not do that because they will only let utilities go through, not something that's not a utility, and this is not a utility.
Are you saying that the railroad has refused them the ability to go
The
under?
the railroad came out and said that because they have had other problems, they will only allow, they've had derailments, and they will only allow what is for utilities, and the CO2 is not a utility.
Now, you have a waterway that floods. Do you have to constantly or continuously maintain the area around the waterway to prevent erosion?
It's not necessarily a waterway. What this was it's her pasture with a lot of grass and trees that we've been working on. And so we overgrazed it once we built the fence last year, which was $17,000. And yet they want to just come in and go through it. And it's very dangerous with her cattle in there.
You mentioned that there is a public or a county tile line that's running water through there. Do you have other tiles that you've installed in your property?
Not on Sandy's side, but if we would go to the south side, this whole farm has been tiled. It hasn't been tiled all at the same time, but as Mom and Dad could afford it, they tiled it a section at a time. So all of this down here is tiled. This is a pasture at the very bottom corner. And
can you show me where, or can you ask the board to have their pointer that you can see to indicate what area you're referring to when you say down here?
Okay. I'm not sure how to get a pointer.
Well, they have one, I think, or someone does, that they can, if they go
Ms.
south
Sonne,
of
if you just want to provide a detailed description, as in, east of the tracks and west of the gravel road, or in reference, and then that way we can go back and see when we're reviewing the record a little bit later. Now, as you're describing that, our staff will do their best to put a cursor up there to make sure that we're all understanding where you're at. But the best way to do it is to just describe it as if we were on the phone and couldn't see it.
Everything south of the tracks and down to the pasture that's about 12 acres down here has all had tile put in it, not all at once, but at different times. So they would be goofing up the tile as well. And if you read the contract close, it says that they would have that company coming in from Minnesota, that they would take care of all of that, but it would only be while Summit would have the pipeline in. And one of the testimonies was that Summit said they might not have it in more than 5 years. The damage to the tile would maybe show up after that. So it's still wrong, guys. It's totally wrong.
Do you feel that once a tile field is damaged or impacted by construction, that it will ever operate as adequately as it did prior to being interfered with?
No, because you've got you'll have a little dip, and then you'll have wet spots in the farm, and then besides the compaction, it's been proven that these if they put that in, you could still have damage to that ground from 10 to 20 years after they've done it. No.
As you pull out, it seems like there's considerable development or homesteads. Do you have like any natural gas or electric lines or any other easements around your property?
Yes, there was a natural gas line that went through here that was Larry's folks' decision when they put that in. But they felt that that was best for the community, and they agreed to that.
Okay, can you show me approximately on the land where that was in relationship to the railroad, for example? Is it close to there or on the border or where?
It would be, I believe, south of it would be like going right through here. Across.
It's on the south end of the property, not by the borders, or east or west, centrally. I need a little more help here.
I'm sorry, I really don't remember to be exact, but it's somewhere. I believe it's somewhere south of a little south of the pipeline that comes across. There's a yellow flag and a yellow state in the ditch that shows it, and then it goes on across.
Does it go east to west or north to south?
It goes east to west.
Okay. Do you have any electrical lines or poles?
Not that I'm aware of.
You mentioned surveyors on your land without permission from Summit, that kind of contact. And you also mentioned that they left a stake indicating they had surveyed in pasture land. Were the cattle currently, were they in the field at the time that they surveyed?
Yes, they were in that pasture, yes.
Did that put the Summit people at risk by being in that pasture with cattle unfamiliar with them?
Well, the cows were calving, and a mama cow is very protective, and if she would take after them, that would be their problem, because the first 3 or 4 days, the mama cow just takes very, very, very careful care of their babies.
So they could have spooked some of the cattle, and they could have been detrimental to calving.
Well, I don't know how much equipment they pulled in with, because they had no permission to be there, and we didn't know they were there. And even in the cornfield side, they bored, and again, had no permission to be there.
Did you at any time ask them to let you know when they might be surveying, or did you deny them the right to survey?
We denied them the right to survey. We had said that you send all the paperwork to the lawyer. It was too hard on Larry. And when someone would pull in the yard, he was bound and determined he wasn't signing anything, and we weren't interested. So all the paperwork was supposed to go to Brian. And here, the last contract that came was sent to us. And I don't even know if I had time to send it to Brian. Larry's care was a lot. And so it was very difficult to get that. I didn't realize that I should have had all this sent to the IUB board as it happened.
You've also already mentioned your concern for safety. Do you think that a private company for personal profit should be allowed to take away your land?
Absolutely not. The reason I'm testifying today is because my husband was pretty humble farmer and pretty black and white. And he said, you do what's right. And this is not right to take farmland away from someone who has worked so hard to buy it, to maintain it, and to pass it on. It was Larry's dad's, and then it's Larry's. Our son is on the farm now on the other side of the road, and he's got 3 boys that they were actually all going to come down and be at Fort Dodge. But with Larry's situation and being in the hospital, we've totally had to change courses and to try and get crops harvested and tillage done. So it has been very, very busy. And when he's in the hospital, my priorities changed real quick. And again, I'm telling you, I had all this information on the desk that I didn't realize that I should have sent to you. I've got pictures, because pictures are worth 1,000 words. And I'd like to show you one. It's on my phone, so I don't know if you'll be able to see it. But Our grandson even went out. I don't know. Can you guys see this? It's on a cell phone. Are you able to see that with the 4 kids?
No, it's just a blur.
It's just a blur. I'm so sorry. What I'm humbly trying to say is that this farm is a small family farm, but it means everything to us. And we need it for the production of the farm and to keep it going. And Randy's 3rd generation, those 3 boys and that little Gwen are 4th generation. And they will keep it until it'll be in the family. It'll just keep going. And that's how we work together to get it done in good times and in bad. So it's very important that it stays a working farm.
Are you concerned and scared that your family, your beloved members, will be going over the pipeline with heavy farm equipment numerous times in order to operate your farming operation?
I'm very concerned about that, and the fact that they could even be sued by Summit because we could be in their way and we own the land. It's crazy. In that contract, that new one that they sent out, it says they have the right to it for 24 months. That's 2 crop years that they have no right to have.
Do you feel that Summit should be responsible for pay for any additional damages to your crops beyond the 3-year?
Definitely. The damage has been proven in other places that it can be up to 10 or 20 years. But again, I don't feel it's right to come on the land, and they shouldn't even consider going that way. No.
Are you concerned that Summit has never built or constructed a pipeline before?
I'm very concerned because as they were putting facts together in the earlier stages of it, there were many things that were not correct.
Do you feel they can maintain it safely or operate it safely?
I have many questions. They say that, the shutoffs are 20 miles apart. How can they do that safely and keep our families safe or our neighbors? No, I don't think they can operate it safely. There was too many mistakes when they submitted it to begin with that it shouldn't have even been submitted as trying to be approved.
Thank you very much. No further questions.
Mr. Taylor, I have you next.
Thank you. Ma'am, I'm Wally Taylor. I represent the Sierra Club. And in your written testimony, you said that the pipeline would have a negative economic impact on your farming operation. What makes you think that that's the case?
Because the yields will be less, and the strip that they leave will, it can do damage to the tile, and it'll do the compaction and the danger. That there's proven facts that they can even go as far as 20 years and the land has not come back into the production that it was.
Well, as far as the tile's concerned, aren't you aware that Summit has said they'll go under your tile and that if there is some broken tile, they'll repair it?
When they go under the tile, eventually that ground will settle and that tile will have bows in it and it won't be able to flow, and then you're going to have different wet spots in the field that are not going to produce. And then they're going to wonder if it's their responsibility because it's been a while, but it might not happen right away, but it will happen down the line. And they're supposed to, when they go through, they're supposed to take off the dirt and keep the top soil and then the clay and the others in different piles. And I have heard testimony that they were in when it had rained 9 inches and they were just pushing it all into the ditch and not worrying about how to replace the dirt correctly. No, they are not responsible for what they were doing.
In your direct testimony, you also said that the pipeline would impact any future plans for the property. So what future plans do you have?
To pass this on, this is generational. And this actually, we use the crop, we use the pasture, we have cattle, we utilize all of that, and it can go on to the next generations. But we don't need that pipeline in there, and it's too dangerous. It's way too dangerous.
Regarding the cows in the pasture, what's your concern about the cows if the pipeline is installed?
Because if that pipeline ruptures, those cows will be drinking and they'll drop over dead that quick. You won't even know, they won't even know what hit them because of the dangerous CO2 gases.
Well, what's your understanding of the safety risk of the pipeline like this?
When we heard the firemen express their concerns and they showed the equipment and the expense of the equipment, and now even the volunteer firemen, someone said they'd train them all. But when they're volunteers and they have to take time off from work instead of being paid for it, they can't afford to go to the classes, they can't afford the equipment, and their vehicles won't make it because the CO2 will not allow their fire trucks even into that. And they are in danger, they won't ever make it out. It's just a no-brainer. Don't do it, it's too dangerous.
Did you ever talk with anybody from Summit about an alternative route?
No, that was never approached. Jen Peterson was the first one that came, and the neighbors happened to stop over when she was here, and then we started going through the contract that was the first one, and then there was all kinds of questions, and she was not able to answer them, and that was just another flag and a no.
So there was no discussion of an alternative route?
Well, I don't know how to say this, but what good does an alternative route do if you're still within 5 miles of the farm? I don't want anyone to be killed or even to be sick from it, and the medical repercussions that stay with them for so long after they've inhaled it. It's no.
Thank you. That's all the questions I have.
Okay.
Ms. Height?
Hello, Ms. Sante. Oh, sorry. I'm Chris Hike. I'm a landowner as well. I just wanted to check with you. So is this a row crop, like corn, soybean?
Corn, soybean, hay, and oats rotation. We have hay some years too.
And do you sell your grain at a local grain elevator? Do you take it to an ethanol plant close by?
We feed, we've got the cattle, and so we use some for feed, and yes, we do sell it. And there was some going to different elevators, and
And for tillage, do you do conventional, strip till?
We
What type
are
of tillage?
usually more minimum till. We have drilled and used no-till for probably 25 years on the bean ground.
So compassion is something that you're very concerned with then.
Yes.
So what kind of interactions have you had with the Summit land agents? Have they come to your house? They've called? You mentioned Jen Peterson. Has there been a few agents? Or?
When Jen was calling, I also have an income tax office at our home, and it was getting so I might have 3 or 4 calls on either my cell phone or the regular phone. And so finally, when they said they were going to come in within 10 days and go ahead and survey without our permission is when we sat and met with them. And there was, and then we turned things over to Brian. And then there was a Tanner Peterson that had called and wanted to come, and he thought he could explain everything and that we would agree to it. And that was last August. He was, I think, the last phone call on the answering machine. And I said, Tanner, there's really no need because we are not going to agree to it. We don't believe in it. It's not right. And so we don't want to waste anybody's time. It's no.
So do you felt that they acted in good faith then during your negotiations?
Until they went into Sandy's without permission and did that. That was very wrong. They were supposed to be sending everything to Brian.
Seems like you've also kind of taken a toll on perhaps on your health, your well-being. Do you feel Summit? Do you feel
My husband, yeah, he is struggling with short-term memory loss, and has been, but it has gotten so much worse because he was so afraid if somebody would pull in the yard and want him to try and sign something, and so we needed to get power of attorneys, and he was too afraid to sign anything because he was afraid it might be someone who was trying to get him to sign these papers that he agreed that it was okay to put a pipeline in. And so the answer was no on everything. And now he's in the nursing home and we don't even have power of attorneys. I shouldn't say that. He is in the hospital and they are wanting to send him to the nursing home. And I'm dealing with something totally different. I stood in the shower this morning and I was crying because I thought, how can I best represent this farm that his dad and mother worked so hard for and do it justice for all of the years that they have put their life into it and hard work and determination. And then to pass it on to our grandchildren. And I just wept. I just kept crying and crying. And I thought, Lord, I can't do this justice. But I felt that I had to do it for my husband's sake because he can't. It's very sad.
Thank you.
Mr. Doblinski?
Thank you, Your Honor. Ms. Sonne, I just have one minor clarification. I just want to make sure we get straight for the record, and I apologize. There were times that appeared that you may have been pointing to something or using a pointer on your screen and we couldn't see it. So I just want to go back. You had a discussion about the location of the existing natural gas pipeline on your property. Do you recall that conversation?
Yes.
Is it your understanding that that gas line route is basically the same shape as the proposed summit route, but runs just some distance to the south across your property east to west. But basically, the summit route would be parallel with the natural gas pipeline, with some spacing north-south between them.
I believe so, but I honestly don't remember, especially as you get close to the railroad tracks. I do not know that.
Okay. I just wanted to see if we could clear that up a little. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Jorde for redirect.
So the point about Summit in multiple locations, entering land against your express wishes and unauthorized by you, does that make you and your family believe you can't trust what they say, including the claims and the promises they make in these proceedings?
Yes, and I hadn't mentioned this before, but one day our grandson was home and our son was gone, and here there were a bunch of guys out in the field. And so at that time, Zach was 15, and he went and took his phone and took a picture of their license plates, and then went out and told them that they needed to leave. And the men said, "No, we have a right to be on here. We'll call the police." And Zach said, "That's wonderful to call the police, because our name is on it, that they will come right out, and the deputy sheriff knows that you do not have permission to be on here." And then they left. But they shouldn't have been on to begin with.
So did that indicate to you that they're an entity that pushes the boundaries, and until you stand up for yourself, they don't back down or respect your wishes?
Exactly, Brian. And they did not do good enough work. They were wrong in so many things, and you couldn't trust them because they wanted to do it their way. And so many of the things that they had submitted at first were so wrong. And if they could make that many errors submitting it and not having it correct, they even had the railroad tracks going through the wrong piece of ground on Sandy's, and then they had to correct that. They had not done their homework correctly.
And do you feel the same way about how they would own and operate and maintain a pipeline, that it's just not credible and trustworthy?
Amen. No, they have no business doing it. It's wrong.
Thank you, Vicki, and my best to Larry, and I appreciate your testimony.
Thank you, Brian, because it's been really, really hard, but I have to do it still.
Thank you, Ms. Sonne. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Jorde, you can call your next witness.
Yep, just let me check here. That's okay. We will call Mary Powell.